And so VFL reserves and just didn't know what they wanted of me. You're not ready. Just go and learn a bit of craft. And it wasn't really articulated to me what I needed to work on. It's like sometimes you just be better, earn more money, like work harder. And it's just like, but I'm not actually getting results. Doesn't feel efficient to me. So that was kind of like the first introduction to me about resilience, about discipline, about just because things are hard, you don't just pack up and go. Like you don't just shift your you don't just change your circumstance if you feel like it's getting hard.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the How to Become podcast with your co-hosts Adam Powell and Harvey Rivers.
Now, we promised that the guests were going to get bigger and better throughout the series, and today's guest definitely is that. We're joined today by an AFL Premiership winner, a 5-time All-Australian, and someone who is regarded as one of the best all-time defensive players in the game. So welcome, Alex Rance.
Thanks, boys. I'm not sure about bigger and better, but hey, I'm not sure who came before me, so I'll take whatever you're willing to hand out. But thanks for having me on.
Pleasure, mate. Thanks for coming on. This is one that, when we're looking at the guest list, definitely stands out as a huge name. Now, we play a different kind of football, right? But I think even our understanding of AFL and I guess what you've done in that definitely comes across, mate, which is a massive testament. And today I'm super keen, as I just spoke about then, life isn't always living up here, all Australian Premiership winner. What's some of the hard times? What's some of the challenges you've had? And what was the journey to go from, rookie to the top of the game?
Love it. And we were lucky enough, I think 3 or 4 episodes, we sat down with Tara Bahana from the Gold Coast Suns AFLW team. And she told us about her journey into the AFL. And she was knocking on the door, I think, for 6 years in a row and just kept coming back. But what was your kind of journey and your first break into the game, mate?
Well, I came from like a football pedigree. So my dad played professional sport as well. He was born in Western Australia, and before the AFL was a thing, he won 3 premierships over in Western Australia in the state league there. Then came over to the VFL, which was seen as like the pinnacle of sport in Australia, AFL in Australia at that stage. So I played for the Bulldogs, Footscray, and then the AFL became a thing. So the Sandful, VFL, Waffle, they all became one to become the AFL. And the West Coast Eagles became a team. So he came over there and was the second ever captain of the West Coast Eagles. So I grew up in a footy household. We were always around the Eagles, and Dad did some mentoring with some younger players like Darren Glass, who was a really good defender as well. He's one of my favourite players growing up. Scotty Cummings, who was a forward, but it really connected with Dad, came from the same sort of area. So I was always around sport, but I didn't actually start playing until I was 12. So I played golf and volleyball and did triathlons, and we lived on a hobby farm, 3.5 acres. So I just loved being outdoors, loved being active and living a fit and healthy lifestyle. My mum was a very good basketballer as well. So she played when they were over in Victoria, played for the Melbourne Tigers women's basketball team. So we're a very athletic, sporty household. So under 12, started playing, and I was garbage. Like I was no good at all. Yeah,
I bet your dad's there, head in his hands.
Shit. So Dad was like, "I'm just going to hold you back from playing football until you can actually do it properly." So under 12s is the first year that you could start tackling and play the game properly. So he's like, save you for that, and then, let you have it.
Yeah.
So he's, probably waiting, under 12s, here we go. My son's ready to go. He's sort of grown up a little bit. My very first touch of the football was a throw. Yeah. I just jumped on the ball and then threw it. And so it's like, you're obviously not supposed to do that in the game. So I just loved the game, and it was just fun. And I think I mainly did it because I just loved spending time with my dad. And we sort of spoke off camera about earning the respect of your peers and earning the respect of people you look up to. And I always remember after games just cleaning my boots with my old man and just going through these rituals which were almost like a growing up thing that I just really wanted to be accepted in his eyes about being a footballer. So garbage under 12s, garbage under 13s. It wasn't until I was about 15 where I started to actually get the game a little bit. I was very athletic, but still didn't really understand the system of the game. I'm sure you boys played with players that were just ballers. Like they weren't very athletic, but they just knew craft. Like they just knew how to pick apart defenses.
Paley. You can't run.
I was the opposite. I was like the athlete where everyone's like, man, if this guy actually knew how to play footy, he'd be a gun.
Class.
Like I'd always, like, because of my triathlon background and athletics and stuff, I was really fit. I was relatively well built, but just everyone was just like, it was that head in hands, like, when is this kid going to get it? So 15s, 16s, I actually made the West Australian state team. And I was just terrible. I made the state team, was terrible, had a really like boring carnival. Like I was just like a lockdown defender, didn't do anything creative. And everyone, I think I probably got in just because of my name, just because of, surely he's a Rance, he should do well.
Yeah.
And then off the back of that, some scholarships were given out to, so over in Western Australia, there's a PSA schooling system. So that's sort of like the top echelon of like sort of sporting schools. And there's obviously academic schools as well. And so got a scholarship to go there. And that was kind of like a bit of a, oh, wow, like maybe I'm good enough to make a fist of this. So year 11 and 12, I went and played for Guildford Grammar. And so they play against schools like Trinity and Aquinas and Scotch and Carey. So players like Ben Cousins and Buddy Franklin played in that system as well. So really big names. So played in that competition, started to get a bit of confidence in my ability and played in some really good teams there. And then when I was 17, so you finish school when you're 17 and you have a year out. So I got accepted into landscape architecture, and football wasn't really everything for me. So was happy to do that, but I was like, I'm going to put that on hold for a year, give footy a red hot crack, and just focus on that. So I just moved furniture for a year. So it was a free gym session, and I get paid for it. And then I would train in the afternoons and then play on the weekends. So that year was my very best year out. And I played, so our under-18s team was regarded as the best under-18s team in the history of football.
Jesus.
Yeah. So we had, so from our local team, we had 12 people drafted professionally from our local team. So not even from like the regional, like the regional estate team.
You don't hear about that much, do you?
Yeah. So it was like we were just stacked. And we had, like, the area that I grew up in, there was a lot of Indigenous boys, and they just brought this amazing amount of flair and pace that we all had to keep up with. So it was like, we just had such an amazing team. So I got picked up, pick 18 in the national draft at the end of that year. So I was 18th best player overall and probably the second best defender in the draft at that point. So the best would have been Harry Taylor, who went to Geelong, and he was a mature age player and played in premiership straight away at Geelong. So I was like, beautiful. I'm going to walk into this team, walk into Richmond, who weren't a good team at the time. I'm going to play straight away, and I'm probably going to, win a couple of Brownlows and, be the best that ever was. First pre-season, training the house down, doing really well athletically, not really getting the ball, still had this confidence and belief. Got to game time in the season. Alex, you're not going to be playing AFL. You're going to be playing VFL reserves.
Wow.
So like 2 levels below professional. So it was almost a step back from what I played at under 18s.
Yeah, wow.
And I was just like, what the heck? Like so Trent Cotchin, who was the captain, now 3-time premiership captain, took Richmond to the sort of promised land. He was the second pick in my draft and I was their next pick. So I'm like, beautiful. Trent and I are going to play straight away. I was like, what the heck is this? Like, and so VFL reserves, and just didn't know what they wanted of me. And
how was it communicated to you at the time? Was it, mate, we know you've got potential, you need to kind of go back to go forwards, or was it, nah, off you go, mate?
It was kind of a little bit of just, you're not ready. Just go and learn a bit of craft. And it wasn't really articulated to me what I needed to work on. It's just like, just do better. I'm just like, sweet. Like, what? Like, there's so many different elements to this. And we can almost, I think we can talk into that a little bit later, almost about business too. It's like, sometimes you just be better, earn more money, like work harder. And it's just like, but I'm not actually getting results. Doesn't feel efficient to me.
How did you deal with that at the time? Because I know from our experience, you see some lads come through at 18 years old, and like you kind of said yourself, you've got at times a bit of a chip on your shoulder, and you think, I'm going to swan in here and play games. And then not only are you not in the first team, but you've gone the one below that as well.
Two below.
So two below.
Yeah.
How did you deal with it? Was it like, I'm going to dig in and show them wrong, or were you just like, stuff this?
Well, I was always a pretty stubborn kid. So I was, and like the best example I had was that. So I went to a music and arts school, and so like before I got the scholarship, and so my sister and I were very different growing up. We're super close now, but she was very academic, loved, spending her lunchtime doing the chemistry stuff, and I was just like out building, stick forts and, playing with the boys and getting dirty and kicking. Yeah. But like, I didn't feel like I belonged at that school. So I started to act out a little bit and, just sort of breaking into classrooms at lunchtime and not to do anything naughty, but just like to watch TV or stuff, like just doing things that I wasn't supposed to do.
Playing up, yeah.
And so mum and dad said to me, and this was probably in like year 9, that I was like, this isn't the place for me. They were like, well, you're not going. Like the first sign of you not feeling like you fit in, you're not just going to bail. Like you need to push through. You're going to make it to at least year 10 and then we can make a decision. So that was kind of like the first introduction to me about resilience, about discipline, about just because things are hard, you don't just pack up and go. Like you don't just shift your you don't just change your circumstance if you feel like it's getting hard. So that was a really good lesson for me, that I just had to see the best of that situation. Yes, I'm not really flexing my sporting ability and I don't feel like I really belong here, but I'm going to stick it out and see if I can make the best of this situation. And that led on to obviously helping me out, I believe, in not only my athletic pursuits, but also my business pursuits and things like that as well. That I always just had this belief that if I work hard enough, I'll work it out in the end.
Yeah.
Like if I just keep trying, I'll find a way. So when I got into the AFL system and I did get that big whack, I was like, okay, I've got 2 choices here. I can pack up and leave. Like I've got a 2-year contract here. So what am I going to do with it? Am I just going to waste it, or am I going to just dig in and try and find a way to make the best of what I have here?
Yeah, the hard work thing's so powerful, because I remember when me and Ad started Harwell Consulting, our agency, we were like, there were so many competitors of ours in the market that had 10, 15 years experience. And I think we probably had about 5 or 6 years between us. And I just remember saying, mate, I can promise you, no, none of them are going to work anywhere near as hard as what we are. I was like, we will just outwork them to the ground.
That underdog mentality, isn't it? And what about your dad in this sense? So he's been there, played the game, gone the highs and the lows. Was he a good mentor and influence at this bad news?
He was, but it was a difficult transition for me to go from it being a fun thing that I love doing with my dad to a business now. So this is my job, and I feel criticised, I feel a little bit embarrassed, I feel like I'm not good enough. And so I didn't want to go home to my dad and just be like, hey dad, I feel like I'm not good anymore. Like, because I didn't want to, excuse me, I didn't want to, I don't know, come across as weak, or didn't want to let him down, or so I think I withdrew a bit from my old man in terms of like from the start of my footy career, that I'm like, I don't want to talk business with your dad. Like, so they were like my greatest supporters, but they almost had to really be removed from my career, which if I had my time again, I would tell my younger self, just like, don't be so selfish. Like it's their journey too. They want to enjoy this journey with you. So he was a good support and I knew he was always there, but it was kind of very selfish of me. I only tapped into it when I really needed it and was bottoming out and just like, Dad, I've had enough. And he's like, no, you'll be okay.
Did you ever get close to walking away from it? Like, did you ever lose the love for the game in those early years?
I don't think so. No, not at that point. Like later I did, but for different reasons. It wasn't, that it was too hard. It was just I had different priorities later. So 2015 was a pivotal point, which we can come back to a little bit later. And obviously 2019 when I retired as well, which was a little bit earlier than a lot of people expected too, was another time which I sort of reflected on it. But when those hard times did happen, I never thought about giving up, because I was always this like dogged, like I'm going to make this work. Like I'm just going to outwork you. I'm just going to. So every pre-season I was like, I'm just going to be the best player in pre-season I can be, and I'm going to try and win time trials, win every single 200 metre sprint we can. I'm just going to outwork you in the gym. And I got to the point where I was a clear standout in pre-season, but just when it came to game time, it was just like, he just doesn't get it yet. But then a coach came in, Justin Lepage, who he was regarded as one of the best defenders as well in the competition. Came to being a coach, was a 3-time premiership player with Brisbane. So he was a winner. He knew how to win. And now he's been a really successful coach as well with Collingwood and with Richmond, and has done really amazing things. So the biggest lesson that I learned from him was you just need to be good at one thing. And then from that, just build your snowball. Like at the start of the top of the hill, just take your one small thing, your snowball, and just keep rolling it. But don't forget about that. Mm-hmm. So he said to me, he's like, you are so fit and you're really strong in the gym. Use that. That's your first thing. That's what you can build your snowball from. So what I want you to do is play on the best forward, run with them until they're tired, and just push them off the ball and get the ball. So let them do the thinking for you.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, this sounds quite simple. So then I did that for a little while, and I was like, oh, actually, he's going to a bad spot there. I reckon I can go this way and get the ball. And so then I was like, okay, maybe my decision-making is improving. So the snowball started to grow. Then I started to win the ball back, but I would just turn it over and make poor decisions on offense. So I was like, okay, like I'm getting it enough, but I'm just not executing well enough. So let's simplify that. Again, the snowball started to grow. And before you know it, you've got this more complete sporting persona. And I guess it's the same in business. Like you just need one thing that you can be proud of, that you can rock up every day and say, I can do this pretty well. And then you may not be able to, close a deal that well, but at least you can start a conversation. So I just want to start as many conversations as I can. And if I close 1 out of 50, great. Then it might be 1 out of 20. Then it might be 1 out of 10. It might be 1 out of 5. And you just, before you know it, you're starting to build skills and build your snowball. And you're like, wow, I'm a really complete businessman now. I'm a really complete footballer now. So that was probably the biggest lesson that I learned early, was just to be a strengths-focused person rather than, man, look at the gap that I've got to make up if I want to make this league.
Yeah, I love that. And a common theme since we've been recording these podcasts has been people. And it sounds like the coach who came in then, he was a person who obviously took a shining to you, saw the strengths you've got and kind of simplified your game and said, mate, do this, this and this, and that's going to propel you forward. It's amazing how in business and in sport, there's certain people who come into your life and just change the trajectory massively.
And that's one thing that I want to be going forward as well, is just the one person to show belief and to give you a little bit more fuel to your fire to be able to keep you going. Because another quote, which is one of my favourite quotes that Damien Hardwick, who was my coach through the premiership years, was, you're never as far away as what you think and you're never as close as what you think.
Love that.
So just stay in the moment, be humble, keep working. And so having those great people in my life and those great mentors really helped me when I did feel like, oh, maybe this circumstance isn't great for me. Maybe I should change clubs. Or maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I should try another job. Were the ones that said, no, actually, you have worth. And if you just keep at it, I reckon you can be great. And that's what I want everyone to feel around me, is like, you can be great at what you choose, but just don't give up and don't sell yourself short. So, yeah, that's, I guess, what I enjoy now, is a little bit of the leadership stuff that I'm doing with the Suns and the Sunshine Coast Lightning and Loop, just helping people to not give up, because you don't want to look back and just be like, oh, I wish I just had stuck it out just a little bit harder because I don't know what I could have achieved.
Yeah, it's spot on. And I love the snowball analogy that you used. And we pump our guys at Hartwell with like personal development and training and mentoring, and we say to them, we don't want you to learn all of this. The guys that are delivering this content have been doing it for years. We want you to just take 10%. Every session, take one thing or 10% and just implement that. And all of a sudden, in a year's time, you'll look back, and even we do now, like where we were 12 months ago to now, it's crazy. And it's exactly what you said with the snowball. Okay, this is my strength. I'm just going to add little bits along the way.
And that's almost like the professional sport mindset, isn't it? Or like the more athlete mindset. It's kind of like, okay, I can run a 1K time trial in this time. I'm just going to try and beat it by a second. And then I'm going to beat it by another second and then another second. Or I'm in the gym and I can bench press 80 kilos. I want to try and bench press 85 and then 90. But if you say to yourself, I'm at the moment I can run a 5 minute per kilometre 1K time trial, I want to get to 3-minute Ks. You're like, no way. How can I knock 2 minutes off? That's impossible. Where you're just like a second at a time, and you look back in 6 months and you're like, man, I'm running a 4-minute K pace. I'm pretty close. Yeah. Same in the gym. Like sometimes we can get overawed by the mountain to climb and we forget about the step just to go one step ahead. Yeah. And also forget about enjoying the journey too.
That's it.
Like that's probably what I became so obsessive about improvement and wanting to get better that I forgot about some of the peripheral things, and I forgot about enjoying the ride a little bit. I'm not sure if you guys can relate to anything like that.
I think we typically do enjoy the ride, but there's definitely moments and times, mate, even, and this is quite very honest now, even recording some of these podcasts, right, I was so busy on the hardware side of it, or in the networking events, I'm looking at the calendar and, oh shit, I've got to fucking go and speak to Alex Rance today. That's so annoying. I'm so busy. And then I'm like, are you actually taking the piss, mate? You're about to sit down with an absolute weapon of a bloke. This is what you're getting paid to do. This is your life. So even now, when I genuinely think I've got the best life in the world, you've got to kind of click in and go, mate, 2 years ago, and there's another quote that I've spoken about before, it's today's problems are yesterday's dreams. Yeah. And it's so true. Like if you'd have said I'd be a bit time poor this morning, rushing around so I can sit down with someone like yourself and then do a couple of cool things later this week, I would absolutely bite your hand off. Yeah. So it's just that realisation. And I think that also ties into being ambitious and being driven. You kind of don't settle for what you've got. And I'm sure we'll get to the story in a minute when you made the AFL. Okay, you made it. Now you don't just want to be one of the few, right? You want to go push through and be the best. So what was that journey like from 2 divisions below, which was not the ideal? You've grafted your tits off for 2 years. How did that break into the big time come?
So it was when, because there was a sense of uncertainty of identity from, playing 2 levels below what I thought I was capable of. And then I was played in different positions and all over the shop. And that's when I really started to become a little bit nervous about whether I could make it at the level. And then that's when Justin Lepich came in and said, no, just like, this is your identity, strength, endurance. And then it became strength, endurance, and competitiveness. Strength, endurance, competitiveness, and interceptability. Strength, wow. And so it was 2012 that really started to click for me, and I played every single game for the year in the senior team. So from 2008, I played no games of senior football. And then 2009, I played 10, and then 15, 2010, and then back to 10. And then I think it was a new coach. So Damien Hardwick came in, I think it was either 2011, 2012. And then it was me. And I became the man down back that, like, we're just going to rely on you. We're just going to play you for the whole season. And it was like, okay, cool. I feel like now I'm ready. And the thing that was cool about that time was I started to get, and this is another thing which I think is really important on a regular basis, is validation, and where we get validation from, is that I was validated internally by the team as the player's player, that like, you work really hard, you do the selfless things, and we love playing with you. And I was like, that's awesome. Like, this is the first award I've ever won at senior level, and I'm so proud of that. Yeah. So it sort of begs the question, like, what validation systems are you putting in place for your business over and above dollars? Like, are you telling them on a regular basis how much you're valued? Are you identifying them as, you're such a good social person and you really connect our team? Or, I love how disciplined you are and how task focused you are. You just keep ticking boxes. When we keep validating people, it helps them to sort of puff up and grow and fill the void that we hope they would. And so that first sort of validation tick was like, I'm on here. Like, I can really be great in this space. So 2012 played every single game. 2013 played every single game. And then 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, I was in the All-Australian team. So the best team of the whole of the competition. And so...
Do you remember when you got the first call up to that team? Do you remember where you were when you got the call and how you felt?
Yeah, it was a bit of a surprise. So in 2015, I knew I had a good year. 2014 was the first year that I was All-Australian. And I remember knowing that, so playing every game and doing quite well on some big players, I thought I was okay. But then I remember I was like walking through the halls and So you get nominated for the All-Australian squad, which is a squad of 40, and usually you have to make the squad before you make the team. But I remember the general manager of footy at the time coming up to me and he's like, oh, you've been invited to the All-Australian dinner. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like, must have made the squad. Like, yeah, you made the team. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, I've gone from like just getting a game a couple of years ago to now being one of the best defenders in the competition. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, never even expected that. And so was super stoked, super excited. 2014 was like another like validation snowball that like I'm not just good. My teammates don't just think I'm good. The AFL thinks I'm good. Like, so that again puffed me up, made me feel like it's giving me goosebumps thinking about it now. Like, made me feel so worthy and important and like all these cool feelings that you want to feel when you're, it's your job and your lifestyle. And then the following year, I sort of grew into that persona. I won the best and fairest at the footy club. So now I was the best player on our team, one of the best defenders in the competition, and my teammates loved playing with me. So 2015 was the best year that I'd had to that point. But what I learned from that time is to be a bit more grateful and to be a bit more reflective.
Wow.
Because from then on, it was the expectation that I was All-Australian or I was not good enough.
Yeah.
And I started to build this sort of like not good enoughness mentality in my mind that drove me to be a really good player, but I think it was a little bit toxic at the time. So 16 made the All-Australian team, 17 All-Australian team. But there was like a pivotal point in at the end of 15 where I was like, I thought winning an All-Australian jacket, winning a best and fairest and being respected by your team would make you feel like it's enough and make you feel like I'm proud of myself, but I didn't.
What did you feel?
I felt underwhelmed. Like, it's like I've gone from being a VFL reserves player, grafted so hard to get where I am, and I expected this to look different. Like, it's like I built this tower for myself and I was standing at the top of the tower and it was like I've just built it next to another high-rise building. But I was just like looking, and what was the view like? It was not satisfying. And so it was at that time where I was like, maybe this, I don't want to do this anymore. And it was like, so throughout that year, 2015, there was other clubs that were sort of interested in me and I was out of contract, and there was talks about me going back to Perth, going back home, but I didn't want to do that. And Hawthorn were a really good team at the time. They needed another key defender. And so I was just really unsure. And so I put off contract negotiations to the end of the year, which everyone thinks is like a sign that, you're going to leave.
Yeah.
But it wasn't about that. It was just about me just self-reflecting and thinking, this isn't what I want to do. Like, I'm not feeling fulfilled by this. So I kind of was just pushed in the area of just like money. Like, I'm going to get paid heaps of money, whatever. Like, I wasn't reflective enough of why am I doing this? Is it really fulfilling all of my ambitions? What does my work-life balance look like? So I just was like, you know what? Too hard. Can't deal with that right now. 2015, I would have been 26. So I was just like, whatever. Earn money, sign a big contract, 4-year deal, I'll work it out in the wash. So again, just forgot about the big picture and just got back down to it and then just sort of kept going. And then in 2017, it was the same thought came back up again, that at the end of 2017, we won the Premiership and I was like, again, like this isn't what I thought it would be. Like I thought I would feel more fulfillment here. And so that started the cogs moving of like, I need to be more introspective and reflective here of what I want my life to look like. Because the obsessive nature that I'd created for myself with this game had started to take a toll on other elements of my life. So it started to affect my personal relationships, like outside of football. It started to like affect my family relationships, just because all my best energy and time was going into football. Just this obsessive nature, this selfish nature, just to be great. And so one of the most like heart-sinking moments for me was when my teammates were at a best and fairest dinner for the club. My parents were there. And one of the players came up to my parents and be like, oh, it must just be so fun to like hang out with Rancey all the time. Like he's so funny, like he's so like jokes all the time. He's always making everyone better, and just like, oh, it must be just like such an awesome thing to have that, you know, around your household and around your family. And they're like, what do you mean? He's just like always asleep and has just like eats and sleeps with us.
Wow.
And I was just like, what am I doing? Like the people that had put all this time and effort into me and love into me were getting the scraps of my energy. And I was putting it into this like, so almost like self-serving. Like I was being quite selfish with, I want my career to look like this and you can help me. So I'm going to invest in you, but it's so that I can be great. And it was like a really, it's an interesting dynamic. I think the whole sporting piece, that it is quite a selfish environment, but it's a team sport. So how do you balance that off, the whole ego piece? And do you guys have any experiences like that when you were playing, where it's sort of just like you want to be the man but you want to be the good team man as well, like trying to juggle the balance of self versus team?
I think it's two answers. I think hard being a keeper is a little bit different because you're quite removed from the group in terms of the competition. You've got your own little competition with the keepers, but I know I've always naturally been a leader in teams I've played in, enjoy communicating, enjoy helping the lesser performing guys get back up, or enjoy bigging up the superstars of the team and really keeping a good camaraderie. And similar to business as well, we kind of try and run Harwell as a bit of a changing room. You know, everyone wants to chip in. Can we keep it fun, light, social? But I think the balance it's almost impossible to keep, because I think if you want to be the best version you can be, you've almost got to step on others sometimes to get where you want to be, which isn't nice, and it's not a nice environment to be in. But I know football in England, it's so competitive and so cutthroat. And maybe it's different over here in the AFL, but you would lose momentum and you'd lose ground if you became too considerate about your teammates around you, I've found, which again is not a nice place to be, right? And I think someone like yourself, mate, with the values you've got, you can feel the conflict internally that you would have, and then putting that back onto the family life as well. I guess I'll flip the question back to you. Is it possible to be the top of your game in a sport, in a business, in a career, but also maintain good levels of family relationships, friends, health, wellness? Do you think?
I think it is, but I think it's not if you want to be the best. I think you have to be okay with the level of greatness you want.
Yeah.
Like, so if you want to be a great dad, there's a cost which is associated with that. Like the time that you put into it, the activities, the planning and thought that you put into it, that it's more than just like, here, I'm giving you my time. Righto, kids, go and kick the footy, and you're just like there thinking about business and just like kicking the soccer ball with your kid. Like you have to be there, you have to be present, you have to invest in that time, because otherwise you're not really there. The same is true, I found, with football, is that if you want to be good and you want to have a balanced life, that's okay. If you want to be the best, it comes at significant sacrifice and cost. Same in business, if you want to be the best. But I think what I've learned is the best is never enough for those type of people. And that's what I found.
And that's sometimes why they're the best.
Yeah.
Because the best is never enough. And that's why they just keep going level up, level up, level up. But I can really relate to what you said about you've got these big targets and the goals, and you get to the top and you feel underwhelmed. I remember when we were 16 and we were gunning for our pro contracts or scholarships at the time, that was the mecca. I couldn't think of anything worse. But by the end of the 2-year scholarship, where I had been a footballer every day, I kind of fell out of love with it a little bit. And I was like, wow. I was like, what changed from wanting to be this pro footballer and thinking of nothing else to all of a sudden, I don't think I love this. I don't think I love turning up every day. I love turning up 3 days out of 5 maybe. And it's quite hard to deal with that. Do you remember when, because that happened in 2015 for yourself, do you remember how you span it round, or what you did to kind of deal with that change of mindset?
I think I buried it. Like, so I buried this thought of, I want a balanced life. Like, I don't think I'm achieving everything that I want to in life. In football, I am. But in life as a whole, I don't think I am. So instead of me actually digging into that and looking at what do I want my life to look like? What's my spiritual balance look like? What does my family balance look like? What does my athletic balance look like? What does my job balance look like? And then what do I want my priorities to actually look like? And I was probably too immature or impatient to be able to just sit in that for a little bit and just be like, okay, I need to put significant time into this. I was just like, too scary, too unknown, just keep doing what I'm good at and just bury myself in that and deal with it at another time, which was probably the worst thing that I could have done for my life balance, best thing I could have done for my football career.
Yeah.
Because I just doubled down and whacked more intensity into this area, which made me feel a little bit validated because I'm getting awards and I'm getting money and I'm getting pats on the back from people who I don't even care about. But I wish that I had have spent a bit more time at that point. Because like I don't really have any regrets on my football career, but I have regrets on the cost outside, that it cost me things which I wish that it didn't. But at the same time, it taught me that if I do work hard at something, I can achieve pretty cool things, which then gave me confidence in other areas that, okay, sweet, I want to be a really good husband. I want to be a really good brother. I want to be a really good uncle. So now, if I apply that level of intensity and almost obsession to that, I reckon I can be amazing and I can have that confidence within myself. But I think there's always going to be times where you fall out of love with something. And it goes back to the resilience piece, that sometimes it's necessary for us to push through some grit and pain to grow. Without struggle, there's no growth. I love the analogy of the butterfly in the cocoon. If someone comes and cuts the cocoon, the butterfly will never fly because it needs to go through that struggle to get out of the cocoon to fully develop the wings to be able to fly. And so I think that it's sometimes important to push through and at least give yourself time in the sook, in the tough times, in the grit, in the mistakes, to be able to work out whether it is too hard, whether you can deal with it, or whether actually I can be better as a result of this struggle and this graft.
Hi, I'm Yas Madbouli, founder and CEO of Serving Our People. Serving Our People is a general charity. We're a delivery and logistics charity that has started in 2020 to help with the pandemic and the disasters across the country. We are helping very largely in food insecurity. We've got 3 people's markets to help people to come and get much needed goods when they need it. We operate in Southeast Queensland and Northern New South Wales, and we're expanding beyond. Please come and support us on sop.org.au. And we're very thankful to be a partner with this amazing podcast.
Yeah, I think it's so important for people to know that. Even someone like yourself who's from the outside looking in has been at the absolute pinnacle. And so many people are going, wow, how good would that be? But to know that the struggles you go through, but it's just keep coming back stronger to really make it at the top. But let's talk about the glory days in the football, mate. I'm keen to know, winning a premiership in front of, I'd imagine there'd been 100,000 people there watching on the day. What does that feel like? Because we've probably played in front of 5,000, I reckon.
And that feels pretty cool.
And that's cool.
Yeah. It's the best way to describe it is intoxicating. It's like a drug. The very first big game I remember playing in front of was in 2014 in front of 80,000 people at the MCG against Carlton. So Richmond and Carlton had both been in the doldrums for a long time, hadn't had a lot of success, and we played elimination final together. So we both finished in the bottom half of the 8. And I remember the ground shaking as we were getting on the ground. It was that loud. Wow. And again, getting goosebumps thinking about it. It was just this intoxicating feeling of just this heightened sense of awareness, this heightened sense of just everything needed to be better. You needed to be physically harder. You needed to be making decisions at a sharper level. You needed to be fit enough. You needed to be willing to push your body further than another person. And it was just this intoxicating feeling of just wanting to compete. And we lost that game. And it was and this is the intoxicating part of it and an addiction. It was I felt this amazing high going into the game and throughout the game, and then this just absolutely terrible low after the game. And that's what becomes intoxicating about it, is I've got to chase that feeling again. And I never want to feel this feeling again. So I'm just going to top the drug up again. Kept going, kept driving us harder to be better. And that kind of led into some really up and down periods where 15 we made the finals again, but we got bumped out straight away. 16 we didn't make the finals at all. Again, just like the lowest of lows. So we'd made a final 2015, intoxicating feeling, bumped out. It's 2016, we didn't even make the finals, so even lower. So we're like, we need that feeling back. Like I'm like, it was like a junkie on this success drug that we needed, like this fan drug that we needed, or craved. We didn't need it. So then 2017 happened, and we started to win. We started to build momentum. We could feel like bigger crowds coming and building, and that intoxicating vibe. And then we played our very first final in front of like 90,000 people, and that was huge. And
can I just butt in, really? I want to dive into that feeling. You're in the sheds. You worked all season for this. You've seen the disappointment in the last couple of years. How are you feeling? And then how did you get to that feeling? If you were pretty cool, how did you get there? If you weren't, how did you try and make yourself a bit more cool and calm before you run out in front of nearly 100,000 people?
Well, we'd matured as a team at that point and we'd almost become like, what's the word? Immune to the drug a little bit. Yeah. So it wasn't as intoxicating now. So like, the first time, I guess, like I don't drink coffee, but I imagine that like maybe the first coffee of the day, you're just like bing, and you're just like, but then after your second or third coffee for the day, it's not the same type of like pick me up.
Yeah, that was about 4 a day. So
keep the energy up. I can hear you boys upstairs. Actually, I'm like, oh, coffees are up when the energy kicks in. But it was almost like 2014, 2015. We'd had the ping, and then we'd had like a slightly less ping. So now we were like, okay, we know we don't want to get overstimulated and too high with this. So we just need to focus on the task at hand. And we became more mindful, we became more task focused, and we became more connected as a group, not so much worrying about the noise of the crowd or the opposition and what they're doing. We just worried about our system, our strengths, and how we could get the most out of each other, which was it was almost like the secret weapon of what a lot of clubs tried to get onto after us. It was like, and that's why that final series was a bit weird and a bit of a blur for me, is because so we played GWS and then we played Geelong, and I don't remember a lot of the game. I just remember being so dialed into system and organising people and making things were set up and that the system was working, and it just being like, okay, box ticked, don't get too high, don't get too low, just get on to the next one. So then because we won the first final, we had a week off. So we just trained and we reinforced those methodologies and mindset. Played the next game, same, dialed in, not worried about failure, we're just worried about system, which then pushed us into the grand final, which is a really interesting time because there's all these other distractions. There's the grand final parade, there's your final training session where I think we had like 10 or 20,000 people at our training session. So there's all this hype and buzz, which it takes great leadership to be able to go, don't worry about that. That's not what we're here for. We're here for what comes after this game. So you have to be really focused and really disciplined with your mind and not allowing it to wander too far, because if you start to fantasize about it and you're like, oh man, it's going to feel so great when we win this thing, and imagine us like running around the oval at the end and you can sort of visualize it in your own mind. You're like, no, that's not going to help me now. What's going to help me now is focusing on beating my opponent, making sure that the dangerous space is covered in front of me, making sure that the stoppage setup is right, and making sure that everyone's feeling confident to play to their strengths. So dialing into that mental performance side of things was what helped us win. And so the end of it was like, and when I've been asked a few times, like in the 2017 grand final, like we won by, I think 40 odd points. So the game was won before it was won, like because we were won by enough. So people ask me like, when did you know you'd won it?
Yeah.
And I actually didn't, because I was so dialed in on my teammates and so dialed in on the process. I was surprised by the siren. Like the final siren went and I was like, is that it? And it was like, oh, wow. And then it was like euphoria and running around and sort of craziness. But that's, I guess, what was required. We needed, and Jack was the same and Trent was the same. Our key leaders were the same. And as a leader, I think it's an interesting thing that I've reflected on. The burden of leadership is not to ride the highs as high as everyone else. Mm-hmm. You have to almost be 10 to 20% less to make sure that everything else is okay. Like think about your end of year party. So everyone's having the best time. The drinks are on. It's on the business. Everyone's having an awesome time. If you as the leader are, let's go, more shots, let's go, and carrying on, you might not be able to. The person that's had too much and is on the floor and not feeling too great. Next thing you know, you're coming back and you've got an issue that someone wasn't cared for well enough within your organisation, and bigger ramifications can come. So that's the burden of leadership, that I really want to be part of this. I want to experience the high, but I know for the betterment of the team and for the betterment of our organisation, I've got to take 20% off this. And so it was a weird feeling to win it, but still just be like, is everything okay? I need to make sure that Basha Hooley, who is a Muslim and doesn't drink alcohol, is he going to be okay with this celebration, the way that we're celebrating this?
Yeah.
And Trent Cotchin. So Dan Rioli did his ankle in the 2017 grand final. He picked him up and put him on his shoulders and walked him around the stadium. How is he going to be able to enjoy this moment as well? Yeah. Leadership, the 20% off. He could have been running around, jumping in the crowd with the fans, taking selfies, but he didn't. I could have been doing the same, but I made sure Basha was okay. Jack was the same. Like, that's the burden of leadership, that you don't get to experience the full euphoria of it.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, because even, like you said, when the game was on, when you're a fan watching these events, I remember when I used to go and watch Man United at Old Trafford, I'd watch them walk out in front of 75,000, and I would just say, like, what a feeling that must be. Like, that is the pinnacle. But to hear from yourself, when you're in that, you're not soaking it in, because you're so dialed in on the game, which ultimately is why you've got to the top. But it's incredible, because when you get to the top, it's hard to take it in.
And I think your point's bang on, but I also think the reverse is true as well. Say something terrible happens, you lose the grand final and everyone's super low. As one of the leaders, you can't go to the bottom. You've got to be 20% above, so people look to you as a bit of a strength, a strong figure to go, okay, we can bounce back, we can go again, we can get a better result next year. So you're right, it takes a special, not say a special type of person, but it takes a special type of sacrifice and a special journey to get to that point. And that's why you don't see many 19, 20-year-old captains, right? They've got to go through the highs and the lows themselves. So when they are mid to late 20s, they've got runs on the ball, they've had some of the tough times, they can help and support those younger people. But do you regret it? Would you rather have been one of the group, been able to run a mark and celebrate fully, or do you enjoy the burden and responsibility of leadership?
I don't regret it, because I think that without it, we wouldn't have got there anyway.
Yeah.
So it's the fun versus fulfillment piece. So yes, it would have been fun, but I don't think we would have won, and we wouldn't have had the fulfillment looking back on it. Again, I think that's the burden of leadership, that you don't have as much fun, but you definitely have a lot of fulfillment.
Yeah.
Knowing that you've contributed to that. And so just going back onto the point we were talking about the 20%, I think what's important to keep it within the 20% and no more is you need to be real and relatable too. Like we spoke about being authentic and talking about that everyone thinks, and Instagram is the worst for this, that they see all these people rolling around in Maseratis and Ferraris and Rolexes and big houses, but they don't see the late nights, they don't see the heartbreak, they don't see the frustrations and missed opportunities that they went through to get that. So I think that why the 20% is important is because you need to be real and relatable. So imagine if we've just won the grand final and you've got a leader going around, pull your head in, don't celebrate, don't forget where you came from, like get back, pre-season's going to be so much harder next year. It's like, dude, relax. Yeah. Like we just won everything that we wanted to. Like let's enjoy this moment. Like same as if at the bottom, like if you're kicking the dog and, experiencing the lows with everyone, it's like, you need to be better and tearing into everyone at the bottom, like that's going to be detrimental. But again, if you're it's okay, guys, don't worry about it, we'll be fine, like more than the 20, people are going to be like, this guy's like a bit crazy.
Toxic positivity.
He doesn't care enough. Yeah. Like, so it needs to be balanced. But yeah, the burden of leadership is something that I often reflect on and think about. I think you either got to want it or you don't. Like, and it's okay. Like, you don't have to be a leader. If you want to enjoy the fun and just be a hard worker and a sort of a punch your work ticket and out you go, that's okay. But just tell me that so I know how much I can expect from you.
Yeah.
But leaders kind of never rest. I remember laying up at night thinking about how we could get better, how we could, as a system, improve, shooting text messages to players and coaches and like at all hours, just being like, I feel like this could be the difference. Like, what do you think? Whereas some players are okay to just sort of put it aside. This is just work.
It's a job, yeah.
It's a job.
And the same for business, right? Like we obviously live and breathe it. You know, that day starts both in the gym in the morning, not together, and then it's on the phone in the car. Great, mate. What's on today? What do you think? What about this? Get to the office first, mate. What can we do? You know, what's the opportunity? What's the threat here? Work a full day. Last one's out. On the phone on the way home. Like we live and breathe it, right? And we're lucky we love it. It doesn't feel like a job to me. It's just part of my life. It's who I am now. Like Harwell might be my last name. But we've been very conscious of not putting that expectation and burden onto our staff.
Yep.
As much as they do love it and they do generally go above and beyond for the business, it's not their business at the end of the day, and you can't expect them to want to go through not the stress and the pain, but the level of highs and lows that we go through, right? Because at the end of the day, we get the full pie. They get their salary and commission, fantastic, and they're well rewarded, I think, but it's still not the same, is it?
No, yeah, that's what you got to remember. And it is so true. Every guest that we've sat down with so far that's got to the top of their sport, industry, business, whatever it might be, they all say the same thing, like, you've got to absolutely obsess over this. Like, you have to live and breathe it. And as Ad said, it's just remembering that fine line that we have to do that. But again, to our staff, it's just a job, and they're all awesome. Like they do, as I said, they go above and beyond, but it is still just a job for them. Yeah. So that's what we've had to realise, isn't it? Is that fine line.
And how did you guys go with with some of the work that I'm doing with Loop? They're a startup company as well. They're about 18 months into their journey. How did you go at the start with Harwell with the startup phase? Because that's the hardest part, especially from a cultural perspective. Like, how big was your team, and how did you make sure that it survived? Because it's easy just to sort of go, didn't work, I'm just going to go back for working for someone.
That was never an option. We kind of burnt the boat on the way out a little bit. We're Public Academy number one.
And shot a hole in the bottom of it. Pushed it out to sea.
There's a bit of a story there, which
we'll tell you another time.
Anyway, so it was me and Harvey started it. We didn't want to build a big business. It wanted to just build a business that was financially viable. We could live a good life. We could support our family and our friends and do it on our own terms. And then with self-development and training and momentum, we kind of saw what we could build. So then we managed to hire Andy and Chloe, who again we had worked with, so we knew what they were about. Pretty risk-free, very aligned in terms of the culture, very fun, work hard, play hard, without the bad connotation of play hard, but just enjoy what they do. And then it was, okay, now the work's there, the load's there, how do we grow again? And then luckily we kind of just got people falling in our lap a little bit with Renee. She was a referral through another recruitment agency partner in Deck, and then Alana had worked with Renee, and then Miranda had worked for our old business. She messaged us. So we were all very lucky, and we weren't desperate to grow is probably the answer. We wouldn't have just hired bums on seats unless we knew they were the right people. And that'll be the case moving forwards. And I'm probably one of my biggest fears for the next 12 to 18 months is how far do we go? And we could grow. We could probably add another 5 or 6 right now if we wanted to, because we back ourselves to find the work. But the day I kind of walk into the office and there's someone in there I'm a bit unsure of, or I don't actually believe they're the right type of person or the good person, I think it's the day I'll have to have a serious chat with Harvey and we go, mate, this isn't what we started out to do. You know, this isn't why we did it in the first place. So that's my biggest fear.
Yeah, I think going back to the very start, like, it had to work. Like, we probably had a lot on the line. Like, my partner was on maternity leave, so it was the sole income. So I kind of loved that about it. I was like, this has got to work. So you just dig in and make it work. And as I'd said, the growth was very organic, and it's quite funny because we've just said that we remind ourselves that it is just a job to our staff, but we've also brought people in who we feel do treat it like it's their own business. So it's finding people that are fully invested and along for the ride. And yeah, we weren't desperate to grow. It's happened organically. So that's why I feel that it's been successful. And so far it's great. And yeah, who knows where we'll be in 12 months.
And I think maintaining the culture is probably the wrong word. I think it's adapting with the culture, because it's changed now from when it was me and Harves in my kitchen working together, just having a crack, to what it is now, and it's going to change again. So it has to change. It can't be the same business as it was 12 months ago, and in 12 months' time it can't again, but it's keeping it within, I guess, the guideline and the framework of what is fun, what is productive, and what's going to get the best out of us as people and our team, and I guess make sure everyone wants to go above and beyond and create the environment for that. And then with Loop, mate, obviously we walk through the office downstairs. You've got an awesome team who are bought in and engaged. I think that's quite easy to see when you do walk through. I think we've been in enough offices, enough businesses to know when people aren't that keen to be there. And Loop definitely is, and even ARC as a whole as well. Like everyone's been so welcoming to us and so friendly, that's part of the magic. I think that first 5 seconds when you walk into a company, how you're treated and how you engage with, that really goes a long way to what kind of business actually is under the rug.
Yeah. But let's talk about Loop, mate. Let's talk about your journey into business and what you're doing with yourself now.
Yeah, so so straight out of sport, I had an education company, which that was like a bit of a tough business learning for me because when I was playing football, I started in 2017 and I had a real passion for helping young people, and so wanted to create an education environment which is passion-based, contextualised learning, which young sort of athletic hands-on type of boys could get a good education and sort of help them later in life. And so when I finished football, I went straight out into that, and I was a little bit naive from a business perspective in terms of, that I had people in and around the business that I thought it was running well, and I probably didn't put enough attention to detail on how the business was actually run. I was probably more the industry expert, which brought the AFL knowledge in, but wasn't really necessarily in how to run the business, P&Ls and, forecasting and all that kind of stuff, and making sure that there was a real business model there. It was mainly like, I love this dream and I love this idea, but is there a business model here? So went out into that and had some really tough learnings over the next couple of years because COVID happened, which put a massive pressure on us as a business because students had to go into lockdown learning and parents basically had to become part-time teachers, which put a lot of stress on things. And then TAFEs and other education bodies tightened their spending. And so basically it choked down my education company, as well as other people leaving the business and things like that, which put a lot of pressure on me, which then got to the point where the business basically couldn't operate anymore, which was a really tough pill to swallow for me. And so that was a tough transition, but a good learning. Again, it was like going back to playing VFL reserves. It's like, am I even any good at this business? What life? Like, am I going to be able to survive? So through that time, I started to, again, go back to, what did I learn about football? Well, I do have value. I do have strengths. I just need to work out what they are. Like, I know I'm a hard worker, but at the moment, I'm running around in circles because I don't know the direction that I want to go. I don't know what my strengths are. So I thought about, I'm hardworking, I'm pretty disciplined, I'm pretty creative, and I like to work with and collaborate and lead people. So I want to put myself back into a leadership type of situation. So I started more of as part of the sort of back end of the education company, more of a leadership bent to that and talking to some corporates and running keynotes and digging deeper and almost documenting my leadership journey, which has led me now to being working with the Gold Coast Suns. So I do their culture and leadership training, working with their leadership team and helping from almost a coach's perspective what I was as a player. Yeah, so that's really fulfilled me to help me and have that balance as well. That I'm still a little bit obsessive about it. Like I still think outside of hours what I should be doing to make the organisation better.
That'll never change.
That will never change. I don't think.
Just you.
But I at least have it in control now. I do 2 days a week with them. And so same with the Sunshine Coast Lightning, a netball team. I do a day a week with them. But my connection with Loop is an interesting one because I'd got the job at the Gold Coast Suns with leadership, with culture, and I always love talking to people. And so my brother-in-law, Ben MacArthur, who he was the co-founder of Loop, he said to me, would you want to come into Loop, do a little bit of leadership-y type connection stuff, because I think that's going to be really important with a startup, that we have a connected culture and make sure we're still having fun along the journey, but also, run some business development stuff with the Gold Coast Suns. So I do a little bit of marketing stuff. I do a little bit of business development stuff with Loop. And for those who don't know, Loop's a construction management software. So it's very much in the similar sort of industry that Harwell play in as well, in the construction space. And so it's good to chat to those people who love sport, love being fit. We can connect on different levels. They get the graft element of it. And so I'm not selling something I don't believe in, and I'm not talking to people that I don't feel like I can connect with. So I don't have a marketing degree. I don't, really know that much tactically about it, but all I know is I just want to talk to people and I want them to do a better job and help them to achieve better things. So that's what I believe Luke does, is just makes people's jobs a little bit easier by saving time, saving money, making things a lot more streamlined. So it's an easier sell for me rather than, being maybe this is nothing against used car salesmen, but, knowing full well that it's, probably only got 2,000 good Ks left on it. And you're like, yeah, no worries, go and buy it.
Right,
Yeah. I feel like this genuinely makes a difference to people's businesses and their work-life balance.
Yeah. You have to believe in your service or your product. Like I know when we went through that journey with Harwell and when we were with our ex-employer, being completely honest, there were probably times where maybe I didn't believe in some of the work we were doing. So we really had to step back and reflect, and we did a 2-day sales immersion with the guys at Swish, and we rewrote our entire sales process. And that was when it clicked for me. And I just thought, now it's got our spin on it. It's our identity. And the penny dropped and I just believed in it. And like me, in terms of falling in love with this job and this industry, is now just gone through the roof. And so's the business. So I can so relate to what you mean, where you've got to believe in what you're selling or what you're providing.
And authenticity, I think I talk about it every single episode, it feels like, but it's so powerful. And even being vulnerable in that as well, like saying, look, I'm not a marketing expert, but I live and breathe what the company's about and what we can do for people. Perfect. Done. I don't need to know the gimmicks and the stats and the ROI and the rest of it. If I think you're a good person, you've got my best interests at heart and you genuinely think this can help me, I'll have a listen. Yeah. And that's essentially what it comes down to, isn't it? How you connect with people on a human-to-human basis.
Yeah.
Which, again, I think the sporting background helps with that as well, because I think you've got to connect with a lot of different individuals. You've got to find out what they can do for the team, but also how to best help them perform and be comfortable and make sure they're in the right headspace to do it as well. So I think it all kind of stacks up, mate, and it's not a surprise you see so many ex-sporting people, whether at the level you were or a couple of failed footballers like we were, do all right in business.
Never failed. Never failed.
Oh, no, we were great. Yeah. How have you found that, though, that transition into business? Because I know we discussed before we started recording that the AFL kind of era you came through, and even with us with football, it was someone says jump and you say how high. It's like, do this or you're out the door. Going into business, I'd imagine now in the current day, it's very different.
Yeah, and it was a very much a baptism of fire as well, owning my own business and being thrust into being the sole owner of a business when I wasn't really ready. Going from, we talked about that, when I was 18 or 16 to 20, it was like you knew where you sat in the pecking order. You needed to earn your stripes, earn respect, sort of almost do your time in a way, which is you're always impatient and you want it more, but it sort of drives you. And I guess it separates the wheat from the chaff a bit sometimes too, is because either he wants it and he's willing to push through, or he doesn't and we don't need him anyway.
Yeah.
So I felt like it was a really good test for me and a really good apprenticeship for me to be able to work harder on myself. But also I think sometimes it can go too far and it can squash talent, that old mentality. And it's very much about like, you're not ready yet. So it's about not looking at the snowball and building the snowball. It's about looking at like how hot the sun is and you're going to melt. So that's, I guess, the start that I came from. And then the transition later on was like this entitlement culture, these younger players that came in already thinking that they deserve to play the very first game and that you need to listen to me because I know what's going on. Like, I'm a star. And like, really?
Yeah, right.
Like, so it's sort of just like, okay, how do I build this young person's snowball without it running away and being out of control and sort of breaking down later on? Because it needs to be on a solid foundation. Like, it needs to be a really good, compact core that they honestly believe in. Because sometimes, and this is what I've found, sometimes it's just like bravado and insecurity.
Yeah,
and people go like, I'm ready, I know what I'm doing. And then you actually go, sweet, no worries, jump into the fireplace. And they just go, and they just like fall to pieces.
Yeah.
It's like, it's actually in your best interest for me to put you through a little bit more challenge because I want you to succeed when the time comes. So it was interesting about the entitlement culture, and I think COVID and that environment is just a whole case study in itself as well about the entitlement culture of, I don't actually have to work that hard and I can still get paid. Oh, I want a flexible working environment. Can I get paid to do my washing and mow my lawn and, look after my house. It's like, okay, that's not necessarily work-life balance. That's you taking the mickey out of this organisation.
Yeah.
So it's been really interesting now, the transition back about, and I think the word burnout gets thrown out too easily. Like burnout isn't, this is hard. Burnout is, and I've got to be a little bit careful and probably a little bit more empathetic as well about like anxiety too. Like anxiety means that you care. Obviously there's like the extreme of anxiety, which can be crippling, but let's not be afraid to just like put ourselves in a point of stress to make sure we're feeling a little bit anxious or feeling like we're a little bit burnt or working, because that shows that we're growing. It shows that we are improving. So it's been interesting over the last few years into the business world of working out who are the people that I want in my sphere and in my camp when the whips are cracking. And you have to be a little bit old school to just sort of say, okay, like you want this, like you got to earn your stripes a little bit. Otherwise, you risk your business. Like you can't put responsibility in people's hands that you don't trust. And if you just take their word for it, that, yeah, I'm ready and I'm good to go, and then they're just like, oh, I'm burnt out, I'm done.
On to the next one.
Yeah. You're just like, well, I just invested all this time into you. And like, so now how am I going to pick up the pieces that you've scattered across the floor?
Yep.
So it is a tough balance to try and be the snowball builder, to make sure that their core is good and it's continuing to grow, but also having the reality checks along the way to be able to be like, this is what's coming. Are you ready?
One thing you said about trust, I think is massive. And if you were running your own business and you've hired a younger person, how would you want someone to display that they're trustworthy? Do you think, what are some attributes and what are some actions they'd have to do for you to go, yeah, I know I've got your back and you've got mine?
I think it's proactive thinking. That's probably where the biggest one for me is being a little bit innovative and creative, to be like, okay, you've told me to do this and I respect that and I appreciate you, but have you thought about it this way? And I might come back to you maybe it's a bad day or something, and go, just do what I've told you. And that's not a great leadership model. A good leader would pause, reflect, think about it and go, give it a crack, see how you go. But like, let's not spend too much time on it, because I know this works, but if it can be better, I'm going to back you in. And if you can do it a better way, I'm going to back you in. So it takes innovation and creative thinking, I think, to build that trust, to be like, wow, this person actually cares. He wants to do it better. But then it is time. You need to build up evidence. And we talked about validation. So when I was playing, it was the Players Player Award and the Best and Fairest and All Australian. They were validations that people could trust me, that I could trust myself, that I was good enough. And so you need these validation processes, I think, to be like, okay, they've lasted 6 months. They haven't taken the mickey with any sick leave. They have supported other people with their work. They've probably done something outside their remit. They're all validation measures which shows that I can trust you, that I can put more responsibility on you if you want it. So what are the validation things that you're putting in place? And I think that's what, and I'm sure you guys do it really well, about checking up on, once you've placed someone after 6 months, like, how are they doing? Like, how do we validate that you've done a good job and you've placed the right person in the right position? It's making sure that then you can be trusted by other people, that it's like, I'm not just here to put someone and then go. Like, I'm not here the same as me. I'm not here to run one event and say that I've run an event without any follow through, to be able to make sure that there's some benefit from it. So you need, I think, the time and the validation to be able to support the trust that you give someone.
I love it.
What about the opportunity then? Because I see what you're saying about the entitlement and people potentially taking the mickey and wanting to do the bare minimum, get the most. How much easier is it these days then to actually stand out from the crowd? And if you want to fly through the ranks and be someone to be trusted upon and relied upon, it really seems like you've just got to have a decent set of values and principles, work hard, turn up, be reliable, do the right thing, and you stand out from the pack. So the opportunity is massive there potentially as well.
Definitely. And I think even more so now, facing what we're facing economically, where it is tougher. So instead of just going to someone and saying, oh, hey, I've been offered this job and it's going to give me 30 grand more than what you're paying me. Are you going to match it? I would say to that person straight away, go take the job. Why are you shopping around? Do you love this place or not? But if a person comes to me and says, I feel like I've worked really hard for this business. I want to be here for the long run. Is there something that we can work out where I can feel like I'm feeling more valued, whether that's responsibility, whether that's money, whether that's something else, and that can shoot you above the other people. Because there is going to be, I think, this big gap in between the high performers that are invested and are connected to purpose and connected to your organisation, and there's going to be ones that just want to take you for a ride. Mm-hmm. And it's just about working very quickly on, is this person, like, is this someone I want around for the long haul? Like, am I going to invest in this person? Put them through professional development, give them like any type of liberties. If they say they want to have a extra work day at home, like, do you trust them to do that? That's, I guess, the challenge, but also the opportunity, that if you can find enough of those good people, your business will thrive, and I feel like your culture will thrive. But the threat is sometimes they can be a wolf in sheep's clothing. That they're just getting to a point where they can maximise their opportunity, and then they just dip out. So that's where the deeper conversations need to be had about culture, investment, vision, identity. Do you feel like you belong? Do you feel like you're a good fit for this organisation? What can we do to incentivise you and keep you interested in this? Having those authentic conversations, I think, is really important.
And I think in smaller businesses like ourselves and Loop, who are still in their startup phase, when there is a smaller team and you're so exposed to everyone, those people that aren't in it for the real reasons or aren't along for the ride, they stand out like a sore thumb. Like, you walk into our office, it's pumping all day, every day. Like, everyone's pulling their weight. If there was someone just sat in the corner cruising, they'd be like, who's that guy over there? Does he work for you? It just stand out like a sore thumb. So it's such a valuable lesson.
So what about then, I'm second best defender in the AFL. I want to get out of AFL. I want to go into the corporate world.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're a second best. I'm saying I'm after you, by the way. I'm saying you were the first. That was a bit brutal, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But I want to move out from professional sport into the corporate world. Haven't necessarily got any corporate skills or any qualifications. What's a good place to start? Is there anything that the AFL does in terms of a transition pathway or program? What kind of organisations should they be looking to speak to? What training should I be doing, mate? What's the blueprint to essentially done what you've done really successfully for someone else?
The AFL have done really well with their pathway programs. Is that, like, there's a retirement scheme, which like isn't like the NBA retirement scheme and stuff where you can set yourself up for life, but it sort of gives you a bit of a stopgap to upskill yourself, because it is a really pivotal point. So the average career of an AFL player is 3 years. So from 18 to 21, they're pretty critical educational years. Think about, you could probably become a fully qualified chippy, probably just about finish most degrees at university. And so for you to be put behind, so at 21, you got a little bit of cash in the bank, not life-changing money, probably not even enough to hold down a home loan, and you've got to go back to uni. So you're 3 years behind everyone. So the AFL and the AFL Players Association do really well at providing cheaper education, providing connections and networking, but also a little bit of a like retirement scheme to pick up the gap to allow you to sort of catch up. But the advice that I would give would not necessarily be to just jump straight into a degree, or because I think what a lot of AFL players do is they would go, I think because the average salary is, I don't know, like 400 grand or something for an AFL player, they go, okay, I earn 400 grand, how can I earn that?
Yeah. And
it's just it's the completely wrong methodology, because if you do what you love and you play to your strengths, you'll earn that money anyway. But so the first step for me would be, don't even worry about dollars. Like, maybe you need to worry about it a little bit if you've got some debt and things that you need to service. But the first thing that I would be thinking about is you need to write on a piece of paper, who are you? What are you offering an organisation apart from the degree? So what have I learned through football? Well, I've learned how to be resilient. I've learned how to be hardworking. I've learned how to manage people. I've learned how to deal with the media. I've learned how to public speak. I've learned how to work with a diverse range of personalities. All of these things, you start to formulate a bit of an identity and a bit of a value proposition for someone else to take you on. And like we sort of spoke about a little bit earlier, if you can speak authentically about yourself, about your product, people are going to jump on that. So if you can say, I've got no formal skills, Like, I've spent the last 12 years playing a game that most people find entertaining, but doesn't give me any skills, like on paper, that are going to help you as a business. But I know I'm really hardworking. I know that if I give myself enough opportunity, I can succeed. I'm quite good with people. I feel like I can contribute to your culture, and I'm really good with leadership. Would you take the risk on me? I feel like 9 times out of 10 people are going to buy that.
100%. I think you might come work for us after that speech.
I was going to say, sold. Mate, one thing we like to do at the end of every episode with the guest is ask you if you could go back to 12-year-old and speak to 12-year-old Alex Rance, who threw his first touch with an AFL football. What's your kind of silver bullet piece of advice that you would give yourself from everything you've learned since then?
It's a good question. I think the it's such a good question, because I think that the 12-year-old version of myself wanted what I achieved.
Awesome.
But the 34-year-old version of myself knew that that's probably not the path I should have been taking, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah. It's pretty impactful.
So, I don't know, like, the 12-year-old, like, if I wanted to achieve what I achieved, just keep doing what you're doing, like, and just keep working hard. Don't take the knocks too hard. But then I think about from a life perspective, I think I would probably tell myself, make sure you know where you're building your tower. What are your priorities? Because I built this tower of professional sport and the view wasn't what I thought it was going to be. So how can I talk to more people who have built towers in business, in family, in social, in sport, and tell me what the view's like?
Couldn't you just ask your dad that? Like, you've literally got engagement with someone who's been there and done it.
Yeah.
And that sounds a bit brutal and a bit cutthroat, but
Yeah. Well, but like, in some ways I kind of did, because he loved it as much as I did.
Yeah.
And he wanted me to be successful. And I think he craved the pinnacle too, because he played in 3 premierships for Swan Districts, but at the AFL level, like, he wanted to achieve that. So I think that's what he maybe wanted, for me to fulfill my potential and things like that. But I think it was probably a little too close to home. Like, I probably would have just done whatever he said anyway, because he was my dad and I love him and I just want to make him happy. So it's a little bit biased feedback. So yeah, I guess going back to the 12-year-old self, it's just like, one, what do you want your tower to be, and where do you want to build it, and what's going to be the cost, would be the thing that I would just want to meditate on a little bit more. But once you've got that, build like crazy. Like, just give it everything, because there's nothing worse than a half-finished house. Like, at least build it so you can enjoy the view. That's what I'd probably say.
Yeah. Wow.
that's an incredible way to finish.
Powerful. Yeah.
But I feel like I've just sat here and just kind of watched this whole episode. Like, I've never been involved. And that's in a positive way. Like, mate, you're so inspiring the way you speak, and I guess the journey you've had on, and just, I think your awareness of self along the way is very rare. And to be able to articulate that as well as you do, man, it's definitely a massive skill. And I know from being around Loop, mate, the value you bring to the place and the energy you bring when you are in the office is definitely noticeable, mate. So it's really good to see.
Yeah. That was incredible. Bosh.
Still not used to that word.
It's from England, mate.
Actually, a mate of mine who plays or did play soccer, James, another one is sound.
Sound.
Sound. I'm like, sound what?
Sound.
Does that sound like? What does that sound like? I'm like, he's like, no, it's sound. It's good. It's like,
It's Bosh.
Yeah, I love that. It's good.
Oh, mate, that was awesome.